You are not broke because you are lazy. You are not broke because the system is rigged against you. You are not broke because you lack intelligence, talent, or potential. You are broke because of patterns, patterns of thinking, patterns of behavior, patterns you repeat so often they feel invisible. And until those patterns are exposed, nothing changes. Most people believe they have a money problem, but what they actually have is a decision problem. They delay decisions. They avoid decisions. They outsource decisions. They wait until circumstances force them to act. And by then, the cost is higher, the options are fewer, and the stress is heavier. Being broke is rarely about income alone. There are people who earn good money and feel constantly behind. There are people who get raises and promotions and still feel trapped. There are people who make more than they ever imagined and somehow still live paycheck to paycheck. That is not an income issue. That is a control issue. The uncomfortable truth is that most people know what they should be doing differently, but they do not do it. Not because they are incapable, but because change threatens identity. And protecting identity often feels safer than improving outcomes. You were not taught how money works. You were taught how to behave around it. Be careful, be grateful, don't want too much, don't risk it, don't talk about it. These rules were designed to keep you stable, not successful. Stability prevents disaster. It does not create growth. Money responds to behavior, not desire. Wanting more money does nothing on its own. Complaining about money does nothing. Hoping things improve does nothing. Money moves toward people who create value, manage risk, and make decisions consistently, even when it feels uncomfortable. Most people avoid looking closely at their finances because it creates anxiety. They tell themselves they already know it's bad, so why look? But avoidance is one of the most expensive habits there is. What you don't measure, you don't control. And what you don't control controls you. Being broke is not a single event. It is a slow leak. Small expenses that feel harmless. Small decisions that feel justified. Small delays that feel reasonable. Over time, these small things compound into a life that feels heavy, constrained, and stressful. One of the biggest reasons people stay broke is because they confuse motion with progress. They stay busy. They work hard. They run all day. But their effort is scattered. Busy does not mean effective. Movement without direction just burns energy. Another reason is that people confuse comfort with safety. They avoid discomfort because it feels risky, but discomfort is where growth happens. Staying comfortable feels safe in the moment, but it quietly locks in the future you already have. You are not broke because you don't work hard enough. You are broke because you have not built leverage. Leverage is when effort produces results beyond the moment it is applied. Without leverage, you are forced to trade time for money forever. Leverage comes from skills that scale, systems that repeat, and assets that work while you don't. Most people never build these because they require delayed gratification. And delayed gratification is uncomfortable. The human brain is wired to prioritize now over later, immediate pleasure over long-term benefit. This is not a character flaw, it is biology. But wealth requires overriding this instinct repeatedly until discipline becomes normal. Most people spend first and save what's left. Wealthy people save first and learn to live on what remains. This single reversal changes everything. It forces awareness. It forces restraint. It forces intention. A major reason people remain broke is because they make emotional money decisions. They spend to relieve stress. They buy to feel rewarded. They avoid planning because it feels overwhelming. Emotional decisions create inconsistent results. Money requires calm, not excitement, not panic. Calm, repeatable behavior over long periods of time. This is boring, and that is why it works. Another trap is believing that someday things will slow down and then you'll focus on money. Someday never arrives. Life fills every gap you give it. If you don't prioritize financial control now, it will always feel urgent later. Most people underestimate how expensive disorganization is. Missed bills, late fees, forgotten subscriptions, impulse purchases. Financial chaos drains more money than most people realize. Order creates margin. Margin creates breathing room. You stay broke when you avoid responsibility. Responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is ownership. The moment you fully accept that your outcomes are shaped by your choices, power returns to you. Blaming the economy, your employer, your upbringing, or your circumstances feels justified, but it keeps you stuck. You cannot change what you blame. You can only change what you own. Another reason people remain broke is because they don't invest in themselves. They hesitate to spend money on learning, tools, or skills, but have no problem spending money on consumption. This reverses the wealth equation. Consumption feels good now and costs later. Investment costs now and pays later. Most people choose based on feelings, not outcomes. You are not broke because opportunities don't exist. You are broke because you haven't positioned yourself to capture them. Opportunity favors the prepared, not the hopeful. Most people wait for confidence before acting. Confidence comes after action, not before it. Waiting to feel ready is a delay tactic disguised as caution. Your income is a reflection of the problems you can solve. The bigger the problem, the more value it holds. Avoiding responsibility limits income. Accepting responsibility expands it. Another pattern that keeps people broke is fear of judgment, fear of being seen trying, fear of failing publicly, fear of looking foolish. This fear is expensive. It quietly taxes every opportunity you avoid. People who build wealth are willing to look inexperienced temporarily. They understand that learning in public accelerates growth. You remain broke when you think short-term. Short-term thinking prioritizes relief. Long-term thinking prioritizes results. Relief feels good now. Results feel good later. Most people confuse being frugal with being strategic. Frugality without intention can become scarcity. Strategy focuses resources where they matter most. Being broke is also reinforced by environment. If everyone around you normalizes debt, complains about money, and avoids growth, it becomes invisible. You absorb the standards around you. You do not rise to your goals. You fall to your environment. Change inputs before expecting different outputs. Another reason people stay broke is inconsistency. They try something briefly. They stop when results are slow. They restart later. Wealth is built through sustained effort, not bursts of motivation. Motivation fades. Systems remain. Systems remove the need for constant willpower. You are not broke because you don't know enough. You are broke because you haven't applied what you already know consistently enough. Most people are one habit away from financial stability. 1 hour a day redirected. One expense removed. One skill practiced. One decision made earlier. Money rewards clarity. Vague goals produce vague outcomes. Saying you want more money is meaningless. How much? By when? Through what means? Clarity sharpens action. Another reason people remain broke is because they underestimate compounding. Small improvements seem pointless early on. Over time, they dominate outcomes. The hardest part of wealth building is the beginning, when progress is invisible. This is where most people quit. Those who persist appear lucky later. You stay broke when you avoid tracking. Numbers remove emotion. They replace fear with facts. Facts are easier to work with than feelings. Financial peace does not come from having more money alone. It comes from having control. Control reduces stress before wealth arrives. Most people chase income without addressing behavior. Behavior always wins. Income magnifies habits. It does not fix them. You do not need to escape discomfort. You need to get familiar with it. Growth always feels uncomfortable before it feels normal. Being broke is often the result of choosing ease over effectiveness repeatedly. Easy choices compound just like disciplined ones do. This is not about judgment, it is about awareness. Awareness creates choice. Choice creates change. And change is possible faster than most people think once the real reasons are exposed. Another reason people stay broke is because they confuse information with transformation. They read books, they watch videos, they listen to podcasts. They feel inspired for a moment, then return to the same habits. Information does not change lives, application does. Learning without action becomes entertainment. It feels productive, but it produces nothing. Real growth begins when learning turns into uncomfortable behavior change. Many people are broke because they overestimate what they can do in a short period of time and underestimate what they can do over a long period of time. They expect fast results. When those results don't appear quickly, they assume it won't work and stop. Wealth is built slowly, then suddenly. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they tolerate financial friction. They accept fees, inefficiencies, wasted spending, and disorganization as normal. Each friction point leaks money quietly. Removing friction is one of the fastest ways to improve finances without earning more. Most people don't realize how much money they lose through neglect. Neglecting to negotiate, neglecting to review expenses, neglecting to plan. Neglect is expensive because it compounds invisibly. Being broke is often a result of reacting instead of planning. Reacting to bills, reacting to emergencies, reacting to opportunities too late. Planning reduces reaction. Planning creates margin. Another reason people stay broke is because they confuse lifestyle with success. They chase appearances instead of stability. They spend to look successful before they are. This creates pressure that forces them to keep earning just to maintain the image. True wealth is quiet. It does not need validation. It prioritizes freedom over admiration. You stay broke when you avoid uncomfortable conversations. Conversations about money. Conversations about boundaries. Conversations about value. Avoiding these conversations keeps you underpaid and overextended. People who build wealth learn to speak clearly about money without guilt or apology. They understand that clarity prevents resentment. Another trap is believing that saving is pointless because it feels too small. Small savings feel insignificant until they aren't. Savings create options. Options create power. Savings are not about deprivation. They are about control. Control reduces stress. Reduced stress improves decision-making. Most people remain broke because they lack a clear financial structure. No plan, no system, no rules, just reactions. Structure creates predictability. Predictability creates calm. You don't need complex financial strategies. You need simple systems followed consistently. Complexity often hides avoidance. Another reason people stay broke is because they avoid accountability. Accountability exposes patterns. Patterns reveal truth. Truth demands change. Wealthy people measure, they track, they review. Not obsessively, but consistently. What gets measured improves. You stay broke when you ignore opportunity cost. Every dollar spent has an alternative use. Every hour consumed has an alternative investment. Ignoring opportunity cost keeps you stuck in short-term thinking. Another reason people remain broke is because they wait for perfect conditions. Perfect conditions do not exist. Conditions become favorable through action. Many people are broke because they undervalue themselves. They charge too little, they accept too little, they settle too easily. This is not humility. It is fear disguised as modesty. Wealth requires self-respect. Self-respect shows up in boundaries, pricing, and standards. You stay broke when you confuse being busy with being productive. Productivity moves the needle. Busyness just fills time. Another reason people remain broke is because they lack patience. They want change without repetition. But repetition is where mastery is built. Mastery increases value. Value increases income. People stay broke when they expect motivation to carry them. Motivation is unreliable. Discipline is stable. Systems replace motivation with structure. Another reason people remain broke is because they don't think in terms of return on effort. They spend energy where returns are low. Wealth grows when effort is allocated strategically. Not all work pays equally. Learning where to focus effort matters more than effort itself. You remain broke when you avoid risk entirely. Risk is unavoidable. The only choice is which risk you accept. The risk of action or the risk of stagnation. Avoiding risk feels safe, but it guarantees limitation. Another reason people stay broke is because they seek certainty. Certainty comes after results, not before them. Wealth is built by those willing to act with incomplete information and adjust quickly. You stay broke when you expect external rescue, a raise, a promotion, a lucky break. Wealth is built internally first. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not set financial boundaries with others. They overgive, they overspend, they rescue. This creates resentment and drains resources. Generosity without boundaries leads to burnout. Sustainable generosity requires stability. You stay broke when you avoid saying no. No to distractions, no to unnecessary spending, no to commitments that drain you. Saying no protects progress. Another reason people remain broke is because they misunderstand debt. They fear all debt or misuse all debt. Both extremes limit growth. Understanding debt changes outcomes. You remain broke when you prioritize comfort over growth consistently. Growth always feels uncomfortable at first. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they identify with struggle. Struggle becomes familiar. Familiar feels safe. Letting go of struggle feels like losing identity. But struggle is not noble. Progress is. You stay broke when you focus on symptoms instead of causes. Low income is a symptom. Poor habits are a cause. Stress is a symptom. Lack of control is a cause. Address causes and symptoms resolve themselves. Another reason people remain broke is because they don't build momentum. Small wins matter. Momentum creates belief. Belief fuels consistency. You stay broke when you wait for permission to change your life. Permission is never granted. It is taken through action. Another reason people remain broke is because they underestimate themselves while overestimating obstacles. Obstacles shrink when approached directly. You remain broke when you consume more than you create. Consumption drains. Creation builds. Another reason people stay broke is because they don't commit long enough to see results. They quit in the boring phase. Wealth is built in the boring phase. You stay broke when you confuse saving with hoarding. Money should flow with intention. Stagnation serves no one. Another reason people remain broke is because they fail to revisit goals. Goals drift. Without review, direction is lost. Review creates correction. Correction creates progress. You stay broke when you let fear of failure override desire for freedom. Failure is feedback. Avoiding it delays growth. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not protect their focus. Focus is fragile. Distraction is expensive. You remain broke when you underestimate how powerful small, consistent actions are over time. This is not about blame. It is about ownership. Ownership creates options. Options create freedom. And freedom begins the moment you stop pretending the problem is something outside of you. Another reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how much their daily routines shape their financial future. Routines feel harmless because they are familiar. But familiarity does not mean effectiveness. What you do repeatedly becomes your destiny, whether you intend it or not. Many people treat money as something that happens to them instead of something they manage. Bills arrive, expenses appear, emergencies occur. This reactive posture keeps people in a permanent state of catch-up. Proactive behavior creates stability. Stability creates space to think. You stay broke when you avoid planning because planning forces you to confront trade-offs. Trade-offs are uncomfortable because they require choosing one thing over another. Avoiding trade-offs feels easier, but it guarantees mediocrity. Another hidden reason people remain broke is because they attach emotions to spending. Spending becomes a reward, a coping mechanism, or a distraction. When money becomes emotional, logic disappears. Emotional spending creates cycles that are hard to break without awareness. Wealth is built through boring, repeatable actions executed consistently over time. There is nothing glamorous about budgeting, tracking, or planning. But these boring actions quietly remove stress and create freedom. Most people remain broke because they don't protect their future selves. They prioritize present comfort over future stability. But your future self will inherit every decision you make today, whether good or bad. You stay broke when you underestimate how long habits last. A habit formed today can last decades. Changing habits later becomes harder, not easier. Early correction saves enormous effort later. Another reason people remain broke is because they treat money as taboo. They avoid talking about it. They avoid asking questions. They avoid learning publicly. Silence preserves ignorance. Conversation accelerates understanding. People who build wealth are willing to ask questions that make them uncomfortable. They understand that embarrassment is temporary, but ignorance is expensive. You stay broke when you chase income without understanding expenses. Income growth without expense control creates stress, not freedom. True progress comes when income rises and expenses remain intentional. Another reason people remain broke is because they don't understand the difference between assets and liabilities. Assets put money back into your life. Liabilities pull money out of it. Many people accumulate liabilities believing they are rewards. You stay broke when you measure success by what you own instead of what you control. Ownership without control is fragile. Control creates resilience. Another hidden reason people remain broke is because they fail to separate ego from money decisions. Ego wants to look successful. Wealth wants to be stable. These two goals often conflict. People stay broke when they prioritize validation over security. Validation fades quickly. Security compounds. You remain broke when you underestimate the cost of distraction, endless scrolling, constant notifications, fragmented attention. Distraction consumes time that could be invested in growth. Focus is one of the most valuable assets you have. Without it, progress slows dramatically. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not create clear financial rules for themselves. Rules reduce decision fatigue. Decision fatigue leads to poor choices. Simple rules like spending limits, saving percentages, and investment priorities remove emotion from decisions. Emotion-free decisions are more consistent. You stay broke when you believe that wealth requires extreme intelligence or luck. In reality, it requires consistency and restraint. These traits are available to anyone willing to practice them. Another reason people remain broke is because they expect external motivation to save them. No one is coming. This realization can feel heavy, but it is also empowering. Responsibility returns power. You remain broke when you do not review your progress. Without review, mistakes repeat. Review turns mistakes into lessons. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how much stress affects decision-making. Financial stress narrows thinking. Narrow thinking leads to short-term choices. Short-term choices increase stress. Breaking this cycle requires calm systems that operate regardless of mood. You stay broke when you confuse urgency with importance. Urgent expenses scream for attention. Important goals whisper. Ignoring important goals guarantees they remain unfulfilled. Another reason people remain broke is because they avoid structure, believing it limits freedom. In reality, structure creates freedom. Structure reduces chaos. Chaos drains energy. You remain broke when you fail to invest time in learning basic financial principles. These principles are not complex. They are simply ignored. You stay broke when you let past mistakes define your future behavior. Mistakes are information, not identity. Learning from them is growth. Another reason people remain broke is because they fear success as much as failure. Success brings responsibility, expectations, and change. Avoiding success feels safer than confronting those changes. You remain broke when you stay loyal to old versions of yourself that no longer serve you. Growth requires letting go. Another reason people remain broke is because they don't commit to long-term thinking. Long-term thinking reduces anxiety because it shifts focus from immediate fluctuations to overall trajectory. You stay broke when you expect fast transformation without sustained effort. Real change takes time. Time rewards patience. Another reason people remain broke is because they underestimate how powerful consistency is. Small actions repeated daily outperform occasional bursts of effort. You remain broke when you treat money management as optional. Optional habits rarely survive stress. Required habits do. Another reason people remain broke is because they confuse confidence with competence. Confidence without competence leads to risk. Competence builds confidence naturally. You stay broke when you ignore the link between health, energy, and finances. Low energy leads to poor decisions. Poor decisions create financial strain. Another hidden reason people remain broke is because they avoid thinking deeply about what they actually want. Vague desires create vague outcomes. Clarity simplifies decisions. Simplicity accelerates progress. You remain broke when you let fear of discomfort override desire for change. Discomfort is temporary. Stagnation lasts much longer. Another reason people remain broke is because they underestimate how much their mindset shapes their actions. Thoughts become behaviors. Behaviors become results. You stay broke when you treat wealth as something external instead of something built internally first. This is not about perfection, it is about direction. Direction determines outcome. And the moment direction changes, the future begins to shift. Another reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how much emotional fatigue affects financial behavior. When you are tired, overwhelmed, or mentally drained, discipline weakens. In those moments, convenience wins over intention. Over time, this pattern quietly erodes progress. You remain broke when you treat rest as optional and recovery as indulgent. Burnout leads to poor decisions. Poor decisions lead to financial strain. Sustainable progress requires energy, not exhaustion. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they confuse being informed with being prepared. Knowing what to do is not the same as having systems that do it automatically. Preparation removes reliance on willpower. You stay broke when your finances depend on your mood. Mood-based decisions create inconsistency. Systems create reliability. Reliability creates trust with yourself. Another reason people remain broke is because they avoid long-term commitments. They want flexibility, but flexibility without direction becomes drift. Commitment focuses effort. Focus produces results. You remain broke when you constantly restart instead of continuing. Starting feels productive. Continuing feels slow. Wealth is built by those who continue when progress feels boring. Another reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how much internal dialogue shapes behavior. The way you speak to yourself determines what you tolerate. Tolerance defines outcomes. You remain broke when your inner voice reinforces limitation instead of possibility. Language matters because it directs attention. Attention guides action. Another reason people remain broke is because they romanticize struggle. Struggle becomes proof of effort, but effort without results is not noble, it is inefficient. You stay broke when you confuse suffering with progress. Progress reduces suffering over time. Struggle without strategy only extends it. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they don't slow down long enough to think clearly. Constant motion feels productive, but clarity requires stillness. Stillness allows better decisions. You remain broke when you avoid reflection. Reflection reveals patterns. Patterns reveal leverage points. Another reason people stay broke is because they fail to align spending with values. Money spent without intention creates regret. Money spent in alignment creates satisfaction. You stay broke when you let marketing decide for you. Attention is constantly pulled toward consumption. Resisting this requires awareness and boundaries. Another reason people remain broke is because they mistake entertainment for rest. Endless consumption drains more energy than it restores. True rest replenishes discipline. You remain broke when you avoid evaluating your progress honestly. Honest evaluation is uncomfortable, but it prevents long-term damage. Another reason people stay broke is because they don't believe change can happen gradually. They wait for a dramatic shift. In reality, gradual improvement is more reliable and sustainable. You stay broke when you underestimate the power of subtraction. Removing bad habits often produces faster results than adding new ones. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not define what enough means. Without a definition, spending expands endlessly. Clear limits create peace. You remain broke when you allow short-term emotions to override long-term goals. Emotions pass. Consequences remain. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they don't protect their future opportunities. Poor credit, broken trust, and unmanaged obligations close doors quietly. You stay broke when you treat money as a source of stress instead of a tool. Tools require understanding, not fear. Another reason people remain broke is because they ignore the relationship between patience and power. Patience allows compounding to work. Impatience interrupts it. You remain broke when you seek excitement instead of stability. Stability is not boring, it is powerful. Another reason people stay broke is because they don't revisit decisions after gaining new information. Stubbornness blocks growth. Flexibility accelerates it. You stay broke when you underestimate how long success takes and overestimate how hard it needs to be. Sustainable systems reduce effort over time. Another reason people remain broke is because they try to do everything at once. Focused improvement outperforms scattered effort. You remain broke when you fail to acknowledge progress. Progress reinforces behavior. Ignoring it weakens motivation. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they believe financial literacy is optional. It is not. It is foundational. You stay broke when you let fear of change outweigh dissatisfaction with the present. Change feels risky. Staying stuck is guaranteed. Another reason people remain broke is because they never pause to redefine success. Success is not consumption, it is control. You remain broke when you believe money will solve discipline problems. Discipline solves money problems, not the other way around. Another reason people stay broke is because they treat money as separate from life instead of integrated with it. Financial decisions affect every area of life. You stay broke when you avoid building buffers. Buffers absorb shock. Shock without buffers creates panic. Another reason people remain broke is because they underestimate how much calm, consistency outperforms intensity. Intensity burns out. Consistency compounds. You remain broke when you don't give yourself time to grow into a new identity. Identity change precedes behavior change. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they expect clarity before commitment. Commitment creates clarity. You stay broke when you wait for certainty. Certainty comes after action. Another reason people remain broke is because they believe wealth is for other people. That belief quietly sabotages effort. You remain broke when you don't practice delayed gratification long enough to feel its benefits. Another reason people stay broke is because they underestimate themselves and overestimate obstacles. Obstacles shrink with movement. You stay broke when you confuse financial peace with financial avoidance. Peace comes from control, not ignorance. Another reason people remain broke is because they don't make decisions proactively. Decisions delayed become decisions made by circumstance. You remain broke when you ignore how powerful small changes become over time. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they fail to internalize responsibility. Responsibility is not blame. It is agency. You stay broke when you treat money as something that happens to you instead of something you direct. Another reason people remain broke is because they never fully decide to change. Partial commitment produces partial results. Change begins the moment excuses end. You are not still broke because you are incapable. You are still broke because certain patterns have not yet been replaced. Patterns can be changed. Habits can be rebuilt. Direction can be adjusted. The moment you choose awareness over avoidance, momentum begins. The moment you choose discipline over comfort, progress accelerates. The moment you choose long-term control over short-term relief, your future shifts. Nothing changes until something changes. And that change begins with a decision you make today, not tomorrow, today. Another reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how much clarity simplifies everything. When goals are unclear, decisions multiply. When decisions multiply, fatigue sets in. Fatigue leads to default behavior, and default behavior recreates the same results. You remain broke when you never fully define what financial stability looks like for you personally. Without a clear definition, progress cannot be measured, and what cannot be measured cannot be managed. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they confuse urgency with importance. Urgent expenses demand attention immediately. Important financial habits require quiet consistency. Ignoring the important guarantees the urgent will never stop. You stay broke when you allow guilt to shape money decisions. Guilt-driven spending, guilt-driven giving, guilt-driven avoidance all erode stability. Healthy money decisions are grounded in intention, not emotion. Another reason people remain broke is because they resist structure out of fear of losing freedom. In reality, structure protects freedom. It prevents chaos from consuming energy and attention. You remain broke when you believe discipline is restrictive. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is alignment between present behavior and future goals. Another reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how much momentum matters. Momentum reduces friction. Momentum builds confidence. Momentum turns effort into progress. You stay broke when you keep resetting instead of refining. Resetting throws away progress. Refining compounds it. Another hidden reason people remain broke is because they underestimate how long it takes for identity change to settle. New behaviors feel unnatural at first. That discomfort is not failure. It is transition. You remain broke when you retreat at the first sign of discomfort. Discomfort signals growth, not danger. Another reason people stay broke is because they allow setbacks to define them. Setbacks are data. Interpreting them as identity keeps people stuck. You stay broke when you refuse to forgive yourself for past mistakes. Shame anchors behavior to the past. Learning releases it. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not protect their attention. Attention is constantly sold, stolen, and fragmented. Without protecting it, progress slows dramatically. You remain broke when you consume more opinions than principles. Opinions change. Principles endure. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they avoid simplicity. Simplicity exposes habits clearly. Complexity hides responsibility. You stay broke when you chase strategies instead of mastering fundamentals. Fundamentals work in every environment. Another reason people remain broke is because they confuse motion with commitment. Commitment shows up daily, quietly, without needing motivation. You remain broke when you underestimate the value of boring consistency. Boring consistency builds extraordinary outcomes over time. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they do not revisit their assumptions. Assumptions formed years ago may no longer be valid. Updating assumptions updates behavior. You stay broke when you believe money problems are permanent. Permanence kills effort. Belief in change restores it. Another reason people remain broke is because they try to solve everything alone. Isolation limits perspective. Guidance accelerates correction. You remain broke when you avoid asking for help because of pride. Pride is expensive. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they confuse minimal effort with balance. Balance requires intentional allocation, not avoidance. You stay broke when you expect motivation to sustain you. Motivation fades. Structure remains. Another reason people remain broke is because they underestimate how long it takes to rebuild trust with themselves. Trust is rebuilt through small promises kept consistently. You remain broke when you let one bad decision justify another. One mistake does not require continuation. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they ignore how much emotional regulation affects financial outcomes. Calm decisions outperform reactive ones every time. You stay broke when you treat learning as optional. Financial literacy compounds faster than money itself. Another reason people remain broke is because they fail to define priorities clearly. When everything matters, nothing does. You remain broke when you don't intentionally design your days. Days design years. Years design outcomes. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they mistake optimism for strategy. Optimism feels good. Strategy produces results. You stay broke when you delay discomfort instead of choosing it deliberately. Chosen discomfort builds strength. Avoided discomfort builds fragility. Another reason people remain broke is because they never fully commit to being responsible for outcomes. Partial responsibility produces partial results. You remain broke when you wait for external validation before trusting yourself. Self-trust is built through action, not approval. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how powerful identity-based habits are. When behavior aligns with identity, effort decreases. You stay broke when you still identify as someone who struggles instead of someone who builds. Another reason people remain broke is because they confuse freedom with lack of constraint. True freedom comes from mastery, not absence of rules. You remain broke when you believe financial peace is far away. Peace begins with control, not abundance. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they don't slow down long enough to appreciate progress. Appreciation reinforces consistency. You stay broke when you treat money management as something to fix later. Later never arrives. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not fully decide. Decision ends debate. Debate delays action. You remain broke when you negotiate with habits that need to end. Ending habits creates space for better ones. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they expect change to feel easy. Change feels awkward before it feels empowering. You stay broke when you confuse familiarity with correctness. Familiar patterns can still be harmful. Another reason people remain broke is because they never replace old patterns with new systems. Removal without replacement invites relapse. You remain broke when you underestimate how much direction matters more than speed. Slow movement in the right direction beats fast movement in the wrong one. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they allow fear of the unknown to outweigh dissatisfaction with the known. You stay broke when you believe the future will fix what discipline avoids. Another reason people remain broke is because they don't internalize the truth that small actions compound relentlessly over time. You remain broke when you forget that control is built, not granted. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they never fully accept that their future is shaped daily, not someday. You stay broke when you wait for a dramatic turning point. Turning points are created through consistent decisions. Another reason people remain broke is because they underestimate how much one clear decision can change trajectory. You remain broke until you decide not to be. That decision does not require perfection. It requires honesty. It requires ownership. It requires consistency. You are not still broke because change is impossible. You are still broke because change has not yet been chosen fully. Choose differently, choose clarity, choose discipline, choose control. And over time, those choices will compound into a life that feels lighter, calmer, and more free. Not because luck appeared, but because direction changed. And direction changes everything. Another reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how powerful consistency becomes once it passes a certain threshold. Early effort feels unrewarded. Progress appears invisible. This creates doubt. Doubt weakens follow-through. Most people quit just before consistency begins to work in their favor. You remain broke when you mistake slow progress for failure. Slow progress is not failure. It is the early stage of compounding. Compounding only looks impressive after time has passed. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they do not create separation between impulse and action. Impulses are temporary. Consequences are not. Creating even a small pause between desire and decision dramatically improves outcomes. You stay broke when you act immediately on emotion. You move forward when you act after reflection. Another reason people remain broke is because they believe they must overhaul their entire life to improve financially. This belief creates overwhelm. Overwhelm leads to inaction. Change does not require total transformation. It requires targeted adjustment. You remain broke when you ignore leverage points. A few strategic changes produce outsized results. Not everything matters equally. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they try to fix symptoms instead of redesigning systems. Systems determine outcomes. Fixing symptoms provides temporary relief but guarantees recurrence. You stay broke when you rely on memory instead of structure. Memory fails under stress. Structure performs regardless of mood. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not automate good decisions. Automation removes friction. Friction slows progress. Removing friction accelerates it. You remain broke when good behavior requires effort every single time. Systems turn effort into default behavior. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they confuse planning with progress. Planning is useful, but only when followed by execution. Execution reveals truth. Plans alone remain theoretical. You stay broke when you keep refining plans instead of testing them. Testing creates feedback. Feedback creates improvement. Another reason people remain broke is because they underestimate the cost of mental clutter. Too many open loops, too many unresolved decisions. Mental clutter drains focus and energy. You remain broke when your attention is divided across too many priorities. Progress requires concentration. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they fail to define financial rules for difficult moments. When stress arrives, decisions default to habit. Rules prevent regression. You stay broke when you rely on willpower instead of preparation. Willpower fades. Preparation endures. Another reason people remain broke is because they allow urgency to override strategy. Urgency demands reaction. Strategy requires patience. You remain broke when you repeatedly choose immediate relief over long-term stability. Relief feels good now. Stability feels good later. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how deeply habits are tied to identity. Changing behavior without changing identity feels unnatural. Identity must be updated for behavior to stick. You stay broke when you still see yourself as someone who struggles instead of someone who builds. Language shapes identity. Identity shapes action. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not rehearse success mentally. Visualization is not fantasy. It is preparation. The mind resists unfamiliar outcomes. You remain broke when success feels foreign. Familiarity reduces resistance. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they attach moral value to money. Money becomes something to fear, resent, or distrust. This relationship blocks learning. You stay broke when you treat money emotionally instead of mechanically. Money works best when handled calmly. Another reason people remain broke is because they underestimate how long habits last once formed. Breaking a habit later costs far more energy than forming a better one early. You remain broke when you ignore the long-term cost of short-term convenience. Convenience always has a bill attached. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they don't schedule financial thinking time. Without scheduled attention, finances become reactive. You stay broke when money decisions are made only under pressure. Another reason people remain broke is because they never create a personal definition of wealth. Without definition, progress cannot be measured. You remain broke when you chase vague success instead of concrete stability. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how much progress comes from removing friction rather than adding effort. Fewer obstacles outperform more motivation. You stay broke when you tolerate small leaks. Small leaks sink ships slowly. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not learn from repetition. The same mistakes repeat because reflection never occurs. You remain broke when you do not pause to ask why something keeps happening. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they expect discipline to feel natural immediately. Discipline feels forced before it feels freeing. You stay broke when you interpret resistance as a sign to stop instead of a sign to continue. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not create recovery systems after mistakes. One setback becomes many because there is no plan for recovery. You remain broke when mistakes derail progress instead of informing it. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they do not prioritize building buffers. Buffers absorb mistakes. Without buffers, mistakes feel catastrophic. You stay broke when every unexpected expense becomes an emergency. Another reason people remain broke is because they undervalue patience. Patience allows systems to mature. Maturity produces stability. You remain broke when impatience interrupts compounding. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they avoid thinking in probabilities. They expect certainty. Life offers likelihoods. Planning for likelihoods produces resilience. You stay broke when you assume best-case outcomes without preparing for average ones. Another reason people remain broke is because they confuse optimism with denial. Optimism acknowledges reality and works within it. Denial ignores reality and hopes. You remain broke when hope replaces planning. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they underestimate the role of emotional safety. Chronic stress narrows perspective. Safety expands it. You stay broke when your nervous system is constantly overwhelmed. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not align financial goals with personal values. Misalignment creates resistance. Alignment creates flow. You remain broke when money feels disconnected from purpose. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they avoid boredom. Boredom is where consistency lives. Consistency builds wealth. You stay broke when you seek constant stimulation instead of sustained effort. Another reason people remain broke is because they misjudge time. They think change should be fast. Time favors those who endure. You remain broke when you stop too soon. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they do not build feedback loops. Feedback corrects course. Without it, drift occurs. You stay broke when you move without reflection. Another reason people remain broke is because they avoid responsibility during uncertainty. Responsibility during uncertainty creates leadership in your own life. You remain broke when you wait for certainty before acting. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they do not fully commit. Partial commitment leaves escape routes. Escape routes invite quitting. You stay broke when commitment is negotiable. Another reason people remain broke is because they underestimate how powerful repetition becomes once it turns into identity. Identity-driven behavior feels effortless. You remain broke when good habits still feel optional. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they believe change must be dramatic to be real. Quiet change is often more powerful. You stay broke when you overlook quiet progress. Another reason people remain broke is because they allow past versions of themselves to dictate future decisions. Growth requires release. You remain broke when you cling to outdated self-concepts. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they do not intentionally design constraints. Constraints focus effort. Focus produces results. You stay broke when everything is allowed. Another reason people remain broke is because they confuse freedom with lack of discipline. Discipline creates freedom. Chaos destroys it. You remain broke when you resist structure out of fear. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how long-term thinking reduces anxiety. Long-term thinking removes urgency. You stay broke when everything feels urgent. Another reason people remain broke is because they never fully decide who they are becoming. Identity ambiguity creates behavioral inconsistency. You remain broke when identity remains undefined. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they expect results before belief. Belief grows from evidence. Evidence comes from action. You stay broke when you wait to believe before acting. Another reason people remain broke is because they underestimate how powerful one uninterrupted year of consistency can be. You remain broke when progress is constantly interrupted. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they believe discipline means deprivation. Discipline is protection. You stay broke when you see boundaries as loss instead of preservation. Another reason people remain broke is because they forget that money is neutral. It simply obeys patterns. You remain broke until patterns change. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they underestimate the compounding effect of calm decision-making over time. You stay broke when decisions are reactive. Another reason people remain broke is because they avoid confronting reality directly. Reality does not punish honesty. Avoidance does. You remain broke when you look away. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they do not fully internalize that financial progress is self-directed. You stay broke when you wait for permission. Another reason people remain broke is because they do not fully believe they are capable of change. Belief fuels persistence. You remain broke when effort is half-hearted. Another hidden reason people stay broke is because they underestimate how much one committed decision can reshape trajectory. You stay broke until that decision is made. And once it is made, everything begins to move. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, quietly, relentlessly. Because progress does not announce itself. It simply accumulates. And one day you realize you are no longer where you started. Not because the world changed, but because you did. There is a moment most people remember, even if they don't talk about it. A quiet moment, sitting alone, maybe late at night, bills stacked nearby, phone glowing in the dark, a strange mix of exhaustion and frustration settling in. Not panic, not fear, just a heavy realization that something is off, and it has been off for a long time. In that moment, people usually don't think about money and numbers. They think about time, how fast it's moving, how little control they feel over it, how every month seems to blur into the next. They tell themselves they'll deal with it soon, when things calm down, when work slows, when life gives them space. Life never does. Most people don't wake up one day and choose to be broke. They drift there, slowly, quietly, one reasonable decision at a time, one postponed conversation, one avoided look at a bank account, one assumption that next month will somehow be different. It starts early, long before adulthood. Watching the adults around them stress about money but never explain it, feeling tension without understanding cause, learning that money is something emotional, something dangerous, something that causes conflict, so they learn to keep it distant, to survive, not to master. Then adulthood arrives and money becomes real. Rent, groceries, gas, emergencies, and suddenly the old habits are no longer harmless. They're expensive. But by then, they feel normal. People tell themselves stories, that they're just bad with money, that they're not wired for finances, that rich people are different somehow, smarter, luckier, more confident. These stories feel comforting because they remove responsibility. If it's not who you are, then it's not something you need to change. But the truth is quieter and harder to face. Most people aren't broke because they lack ability. They're broke because they never stopped long enough to rewrite the story they're living inside. Think about how most days actually go. Wake up already behind. Rush through the morning. Spend the day reacting. Spend money automatically. Eat quickly. Scroll endlessly. Fall into bed tired. Tell yourself tomorrow you'll be more intentional. Tomorrow rarely arrives with new energy. It arrives with the same habits. Wealth doesn't enter lives like that. Not because it's cruel, but because nothing intentional lives there yet. Everything is reactive, and money reflects that perfectly. There's another moment people remember, a different kind. A moment when they briefly feel hope. Maybe a raise, a bonus, a new job. For a few weeks, everything feels lighter. They breathe easier. They think, finally, this is it. And then slowly, without noticing, spending expands. Commitments grow. Comfort creeps back in. And the extra money disappears. Not dramatically, just quietly, until they're right back where they started, wondering how it happened again. That's when frustration turns inward. They start blaming themselves, but without clarity. Just a vague sense of failure. They promise to do better, but they don't change structure. And without structure, nothing sticks. People who build wealth don't live without stress. They live with fewer surprises. They don't eliminate problems. They design buffers. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on routines that work even when motivation is gone. Most people never see this part. They only see outcomes. The calm, the flexibility, the options. They don't see the quiet nights of restraint, the boring repetition, the decisions no one applauds. There's a turning point for some people. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just a decision that feels heavier than usual. A decision to stop pretending they don't know what needs to change. To stop blaming time, luck, or circumstances. To stop waiting for permission. That decision usually doesn't feel exciting. It feels serious. They start small. Not because small is impressive, but because small is sustainable. They look at their numbers without flinching. They tell the truth without shame. They stop asking how to get rich fast and start asking how to stop leaking energy and money daily. They notice patterns, the same impulses, the same justifications, the same moments where discipline fades. And instead of judging themselves, they redesign the environment. Fewer decisions, clearer rules, less chaos. Over time, something shifts internally. Money stops feeling emotional. It becomes mechanical, calm, predictable. Stress doesn't disappear, but it no longer dominates. The biggest change isn't financial at first. It's psychological. They trust themselves again. They keep promises to themselves. And that trust quietly builds confidence that no motivation speech ever could. Months pass, then years. Nothing magical happens. But life feels lighter. Choices expand. Emergencies stop feeling catastrophic. The future stops feeling threatening. And one day, almost without noticing, they realize they are no longer broke. Not because they became someone else, but because they stopped living on autopilot. They stopped reacting. They started directing. That's the part no one talks about. Being broke isn't a permanent identity. It's a temporary state supported by patterns. Change the patterns and the state can't survive. The story changes when the behavior changes. And behavior changes when awareness becomes action. Quietly, consistently, over time. That's how it actually happens. Not fast, not flashy, but for real. There's a morning that becomes a dividing line. Nothing dramatic happens. No fireworks. No huge deposit hits your account. It's just one of those normal mornings where you wake up and feel that same old pressure in your chest, like your life is being pushed forward by bills instead of pulled forward by purpose. You walk into the kitchen, open the fridge, and your brain is already doing math you didn't ask it to do. Gas, groceries, rent, the credit card, the thing you forgot to pay, the thing you hope doesn't hit this week. And in that moment, you realize something clearly. Not as an insult, not as shame, just a clean fact. If nothing changes, nothing changes. So you decide to do what most people avoid. You decide to stop guessing. You decide to stop hoping. You decide to stop living inside fog. You decide to build a process. The first step is simple, but most people skip it because it forces honesty. You sit down with your bank app open and you choose a time window. Not a week, not a day, 30 days. You need a full month because a week can lie to you. A week can look calm right before chaos. You scroll through every transaction and you do not judge yourself. You don't call yourself names. You don't get emotional. You treat it like data. Just information. You are not your spending habits. You are a person who has been running patterns. Patterns can be changed. You write down 3 numbers. Your total income for the month, your total essential expenses, and your total non-essential expenses. Essentials are things that keep your life functioning. Housing, utilities, basic food, transportation, insurance. Non-essentials are everything else. Dining out, subscriptions, impulse purchases, convenience spending, and the sneaky stuff that doesn't look like much until it adds up. Most people find the same thing here. They don't have one big problem. They have 10 small leaks. And that is good news because small leaks are easier to fix than big disasters. The next step is where you take back control. You create what I'll call your floor. Your floor is the minimum cost of your life. The cost to keep you safe, fed, housed, and operational. Not comfortable, operational. This number matters because most people don't know it. They feel broke, but they can't say what not broke would even require. When you know your floor, anxiety drops immediately because the unknown becomes known. Now you create your first rule. You save first, not what's left. First, even if it's small, even if it's $20. Because the goal right now is not massive savings. The goal is control. You choose a percentage that feels almost too easy. 1%, 2%, 5%. You set it to automatically transfer to a separate account the day you get paid. Automatic is key because you are not trying to win with willpower. You are trying to win with systems. Then you do something most people don't do until it's too late. You build a buffer, not an emergency fund of 6 months. That comes later. Your first buffer is a breathing buffer. $1,000 if possible, $500 if that's what you can do. The point is to reduce panic. Panic creates stupid decisions. A buffer creates calm. If you're listening to this and thinking, I can't save anything, then you're not at the saving stage yet. You're at the leak stopping stage. And leak stopping is still progress. So here's what you do next. You pick one category of spending to eliminate for 30 days. Just one. Not because you're punishing yourself, because you're proving to yourself that you can direct your behavior. Maybe it's fast food. Maybe it's Amazon purchases. Maybe it's energy drinks. Maybe it's random subscriptions. You pick one and you make it a challenge. 30 days. You don't negotiate with it daily. You decide once. This is important because being broke is often the result of constant micro-negotiations. Should I? Maybe I deserve it. It's only $20. I'll make up for it later. Those micro-negotiations drain your future. So you remove one entire category and you redirect that money into your buffer automatically. You don't let it sit in checking where it disappears. You move it. At this point, something changes. It's subtle, but it matters. You start to feel like you're steering again. Now you move to the next phase. Income. Here's a truth that sounds harsh but becomes empowering once you accept it. Your income is the marketplace's response to the value you can deliver. Your income is not a score of your worth. It's a measurement of your leverage. So the next step is to choose one high-value skill and commit to it for 90 days. Not 7, not 14, 90. Because skills don't change your life in a weekend. They change your life when you practice them long enough to become valuable. The highest leverage skill for most people is sales. And if sales makes you uncomfortable, that discomfort is exactly why it works. Because most people avoid it, and whatever most people avoid becomes valuable. Sales is not manipulation. Sales is the ability to communicate value clearly, confidently, and honestly. It's the ability to solve problems and ask to be paid. That's it. So you build your skill plan. 30 minutes a day, every day, for 90 days. You choose one resource to learn from and you stick with it. A book, a course, a mentor, a channel. Not 10. 1. Depth beats variety. Then you practice in real life. Practice means doing the thing, not thinking about the thing. You start small. You practice asking for what you want without apology. You practice negotiating. You practice speaking clearly. You practice making offers. You practice in safe situations first. At a store return, on a phone call, asking for a discount, asking for a better rate, asking for a raise, asking for a referral. You train your nervous system to tolerate money conversations. Because the real barrier for most people isn't knowledge, it's emotional resistance. Now comes a step that separates people who try from people who change. You create an offer. An offer is something simple you can provide that helps someone else. It can be a service, a product, a skill, something you can deliver without needing permission from a company or a gatekeeper. You list your assets, skills you already have, things people ask you for help with, things you've done successfully, areas where you're reliable. Your goal is not to create the perfect offer. Your goal is to create a first offer. Then you choose a target. Who needs this? Be specific. Not everyone. Someone. A certain type of person. A certain kind of problem. Now you do something that feels uncomfortable but changes everything. You talk to people. Not online scrolling. Not dreaming. You talk to real humans. You reach out to 10 people and you ask a simple question. What's your biggest frustration with this problem? You listen. You do not pitch. You gather language. Because when you use the customer's language, you don't need hype. You need clarity. Then you create a simple solution, something deliverable in a week. Not a huge project, something you can fulfill quickly. Speed matters because it creates momentum and learning. Now you set a price. Not a perfect price, a real price. Pricing is a skill. You learn it by doing it. And now you make the offer. You make it to the 10 people you spoke to. You say, based on what you told me, I can help you with this. Here's what it looks like. Here's the price. If you want it, I'll start this week. This moment is where most people freeze. They want certainty. They want it to be perfect. They want to avoid rejection. But this is the exact point where getting ahead begins. Because getting ahead is not about never being rejected. It's about becoming the type of person who can handle rejection and continue. If nobody buys, you do not collapse. You adjust. You lower the scope. You change the framing. You improve the offer. You try again. This is how businesses are built. This is how careers improve. This is how income rises. If one person buys, you deliver like a professional. You over-deliver on clarity and reliability. You make them feel taken care of. Then you ask for a testimonial. Then you ask for a referral. Now you have proof. Proof creates confidence. Confidence creates momentum. At the same time, you keep your leak-stopping rules. Because income without discipline becomes new spending. The goal is not to earn more and stay stuck. The goal is to earn more and keep more. So you create a simple split system. Every time money comes in, it gets divided automatically. A percentage to essentials, a percentage to buffer, a percentage to debt payoff if you have it, a percentage to growth. Growth means investing in skills, tools, and assets. Then you set a weekly review. 10 minutes, same day every week. You look at your numbers, what came in, what went out, where you leaked, where you improved, no shame, just feedback. This review is what keeps you from drifting. Now you move to the next level. Building assets. Assets are not just stocks or real estate. Assets are anything that produces value repeatedly, a skill that gets you paid more, a system that saves time, a product you can sell again, content that brings attention, relationships that create opportunity. You choose one asset path based on your life. If you're good with people, build a service. If you're good with teaching, build content. If you're good with systems, build automation. If you're good with selling, build offers. Then you commit to one creation schedule, 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, consistent. You do not chase inspiration, you build rhythm. And this is the part where people start to notice change. Not because the money is massive yet, but because your behavior is different. You are not drifting. You are building. You begin to feel something rare. Financial dignity, not pride, dignity. The quiet confidence that you are handling your life. Your nervous system calms. You sleep better. You make better decisions. You stop needing little rewards to survive the day. You can delay gratification because you trust your future. Now you begin to speed up. You take the offer that worked and you improve it. You document the steps. You make delivery more efficient. You make it easier to repeat. You raise the price gradually as results improve. You stop undercharging out of fear. You charge based on value. You build a simple pipeline. Each week you talk to new people. Each week you make offers. Each week you deliver. Each week you review numbers. Each week you improve. This is how people get ahead. Not through one big move, but through a loop. Control spending, build buffer, build skill, create offer, sell offer, deliver value, collect proof, raise value, repeat. Over time, your life changes because your patterns change. And at some point you realize you're no longer trying to get your finances together. They are together. You are no longer hoping for relief. You are creating it. So here's the real step-by-step process, boiled down into a simple path. First, track 30 days. Learn the truth without shame. Second, calculate your floor. Know your minimum survival costs. Third, automate a small savings transfer. Build control, not perfection. Fourth, choose one spending category to eliminate for 30 days. Redirect that money into a buffer. Fifth, build a breathing buffer. $500 to $1,000 as a first target. Sixth, pick one high-value skill and practice daily for 90 days. Seventh, create a simple offer that solves a real problem quickly. Eighth, talk to people, collect language, then make the offer directly. Ninth, deliver with excellence, collect proof, and ask for referrals. 10th, set a weekly review so you don't drift. And if you do only these things consistently for 6 months, your life will not look the same. Not because you found a trick, but because you finally stopped living in reaction. You started living in direction. And direction is what changes everything.